What is up, everyone? I am Nate Polvogt. Next to me is C.H. Herms. This is Nate and Herms live on Optimus Fantasy. We're about an hour late. We got into some deep, intense life conversation, and this is like open bar. You remember open bar?
Oh, dude, good times. Shout out Gabe. Shout out J Mike.
Oh man, that was a good time. If you never saw that podcast, it was a mishmash of 2 hours of life and football. It's 10 p.m. ish, which apparently we've taken on. We should have Gabe and J Mike on.
That would be tremendous. Hey, if you're out there,
right? Maybe Jamie Parag knows where to find him. Jamie, what is up, buddy? It is good to see you here in the chat. Back, I mean, we got to retire that one.
Hey, even if it is, no issues.
You know, we love you, buddy. He's got to be happy about his Browns, man.
Oh, dude, Jameis Winston coming in to save the day. That was, dude,
334 yards passing.
Absolutely incredible. And also, like, being a Steelers fan, at least of my age group, and like the time that I've been watching the NFL, I've always just like felt bad for the Browns in some sort of like, because they're like little brother energy where it's like, oh man, like you'll get there, I promise. Just keep trying, I swear, you know. So like, and even like when Baker ultimately beat them in that playoffs, like Roethlisberger's last year or whatever it was, I didn't even care. I was like, you know what, cool, like good. I really, you know, after, you know, kind of selling your soul to get Watson until I'm a little bit less excited about, you know, giving them that treatment. But like still, Winston coming in, kind of turning the ship around, way more exciting than anything else that could have happened.
Well, what was really fun is we watched him unlock Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and David Njoku. And that's not obviously, it's not going to carry on. They've got a tough schedule coming up. Like Jamie had noted in the chat, and I wrote about it in my waiver wire column. Have tempered expectations for what Jameis can do, but this is still better than what you were going to get from Deshaun Watson.
Oh, 10,000%. The level of terrible quarterback play that was being put out before is historic. So literally the only direction you could do is going up.
Well, I think what's kind of ironic, as I was doing my research last night, Deshaun Watson was having his best game as a Cleveland Brown when he popped his Achilles. He only had 2 incompletions on like 18 attempts.
Schadenfreude, baby.
Right. Elijah Moore, 12 targets gives promise. And I agree. And I think Elijah Moore is a guy in this Cleveland offense who plays a role that's not going to diminish. They're going to have tough opponents, but Jameis is still going to throw it 40 or 50 times. So somebody has to see the targets. How successful they're going to be, I mean, we can only guess, I guess. But what we can talk about, first topic of the show, Deontay Johnson, he goes to the Baltimore Ravens in a really strange deal. If you think about what Carolina actually lost out on here, he was going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. He signs somewhere else. They get a compensatory pick. They just gave up a compensatory pick. They didn't have to. There's no reason to. This team's not going anywhere. Why not hold on to him and take the pick?
I mean, I kind of get the logic behind that criticism, but at the same time, if you're so directionless to begin with and you can just get a known commodity now, what harm is really being done?
Fair point, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so here's a good question from HoofTube. Hoof, what is up, buddy? Thank you for tuning in over there on YouTube. HoofTube runs our Twitter. So if you like all those awesome Twitter posts, he's been very cheeky lately, and we love it. And Storyline Storytime, his article is changing up here soon, so make sure to check that out on the website. Absolutely. Is Deontay Johnson the next Allen Robinson?
Dude, Allen Robinson's issue had more to do with the fact that he consistently got injured. I don't think it was any sort of detriment of his own or the circumstances that he was in necessarily, outside of, the stint in Chicago in which he was probably criminally underused in his prime.
Oh, criminally.
But still had a lot of
Okay.
ailments that contributed to that. Deontay, it's just...
So let's take the injuries out of it. Sure, but injuries, let's say injuries are the same thing as victim of circumstance. Are they the same player, basically?
Sure. I could, in terms of just broad value in how we look at them for fantasy purposes, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I think that, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I really think Baltimore is going to be an exciting landing spot for him. I'm sure we have, other things that we can talk about within this segment about that. So, but yeah, I think his fate's going to be a little bit different, though. I'm curious to know what your perspective on this deal was. Not so much from the Carolina side, because there's a million different rabbit holes we could go down for that, but just specifically looking at Baltimore, I'm curious what you think his impact is going to be.
I don't feel like there's going to be much, honestly. This is a team that is starting to lean back into the run. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson have been phenomenal. I think there will be games where Deontay Johnson will be featured, but Mark Andrews is starting to get back into the fold. We've seen them really kind of liking Justice Hill, or at least Lamar Jackson liking Justice Hill. He's been looking at him a little bit more. I think this is a team that's kind of shifting away from wide receivers who aren't Zay Flowers. And even Zay Flowers, I'm a little worried about his value. I need to see what happens over the next couple of weeks with this offense. Their passing rate is down. I believe they're down about 6% over the last 3 games. Mm-hmm. So adding Johnson's great. Maybe that bumps their pass rate, but I don't know that it will, because they've been so successful with what they're doing now.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the interesting things that I had written about a little bit earlier in the year, because this concept of finally getting rid of the big bad monster of Greg Roman and bringing in Todd Mock and adding some sort of modern elements of this offense, like, I think that has still rung, relatively true. Lamar is having his best passing season, in terms of efficiency that he's had in his entire career. But to your point, they're still operating at a slightly lower volume, to the point that, it's strange considering what the expectations were when they made this organizational shift. But ultimately, I think it's still going to lend itself well in terms of like how Deontay is going to be able to operate, because, I think the biggest question I think fantasy managers have is who loses out. I know that you had mentioned that you're a little bit nervous about Zay Flowers. Some people are a little bit nervous about, like, maybe does this, stunt the Mark Andrews resurgence that we've been low-key kind of seeing of late. But the more I think about it, the more I kind of think that, just based off of the type of player that Deontay Johnson is, especially being a Steelers fan, watching most of his career, to date, a very good short and intermediate area target. That level of the field is where, as soon as you can get it into his hands, he's very shifty. He can kind of make space for himself. Those outlet passes that have gone to Justice Hill, I think, are going to be the ones that are going to completely evaporate. To your point, with how run-heavy they are, they're still going to have all of Derrick Henry doing his thing, but that kind of work that would be ceded to Justice Hill, cutting into that snap share, having to be out there to catch those kind of check down outlet passes and stuff, like that is going to be a little bit more of what I think Deontay Johnson does, and allows Zay Flowers to be more of that kind of spark plug that can run further downfield, kind of like he did when he was at Boston College, and was one of the appeals of him as a prospect coming into the league in general. So for as nervous as people might be about Zay Flowers, I think it's just going to be him operating in a slightly different role, and there's just going to be a allocation of targets away from more of the cursory pieces like Justice Hill, and also Rashad Bateman, just RIP. Like that's the kind of role that I'm talking about, where some of those prime targets that would be huge downfield plays to Bateman are just all going to go to Flowers now.
Okay, so I want to highlight this from Jamie. RIP Bateman, this came in at 12:44, so about 6 minutes ago. So he was a little bit ahead of us on that one. HoofTube is, oh, nope, we already got to that one here. Here's the one I wanted to get to. Fan Patron Neto over there on YouTube wants to know, Zay Flowers or Deontay Johnson? For me, it's Zay Flowers. The ceiling's higher for Flowers. Deontay Johnson has a nice floor, maybe. We'll see. I need to see it over like a week or two, see how they're going to use him. Typically, wide receivers who get moved this late in the season don't have much of a fantasy impact. So that does concern me. It's historical.
Yeah. And not only that, but kind of like I was saying, the role that I anticipate Deontay Johnson taking on is a bit more of kind of a volume dependent situation than anything else, to the point where I think he kind of taps out at being like Wan'Dale Robinson or something. Whereas if Zay Flowers does take this opportunity to kind of move into a different role and get unlocked and do some higher ADOT stuff, he's going to be on the receiving end of those money Lamar throws. Those are going to be huge points.
Sure. Hoof tube for Deontay. 4 receptions, 54 yards, 1 touchdown incoming. That's pretty Wan'Dale-ish.
That's Wan'Dale. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing we're talking about. Like, if you're looking for, we were promised a PPR flex option out of Deontay Johnson coming into this year, and we may not have gotten it consistently early on, but boy, are we about to get it now.
Oh, we definitely are about to get it now. I've got a couple of hellos in the chat. Albert Mariquin. Hello, everyone. Albert, good to see you, buddy. Always a pleasure. And, it's our favorite fantasy cat. Mr.
Congrats on the Dodgers. Congratulations on the Los Angeles Dodgers winning the World Series. Screw the Yankees. Hell yeah.
Well, I have a – there we go. Yep. So that'll tell you how I felt about this series. That's part of what made us late. We watched the bottom half of the ninth here on StreamYard before we went live. Congratulations, guys. Go Dodgers, which is not something I thought I'd say very often as someone who grows up in Colorado, and I'm supposed to be a Red Sox.
For me, as a Nats fan.
Oh, yeah, fair. Yeah, but it's the Yankees, man, the evil empire.
Yankees suck.
Yeah, and Steinbrenner still owns them. So there. A Steinbrenner does not own the Los Angeles Rams. That's a Kroenke.
Transition. Boom. Look at that.
See? Boom.
Pro. That's pro.
The band is back. So Matthew Stafford was QB 29 coming into this week. Matthew Stafford was what? I think it's QB 5, QB 7, something somewhere around there. This week I'd have to pull it up.
Sounds more right.
This Rams team looked like a Super Bowl contending team, like a team that could win their division with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back. It was like Jekyll.
Possibly.
Well, they're tied for the division lead. Hoof says absolutely not. We made him mad. I don't. If Kyron Williams stays healthy, he's a top 5 running back rest of the way.
Absolutely.
Their line feels healthy.
It's getting there for sure.
What they were missing was Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
They're game-changing players. I think they can win the division. The 49ers are limping along, man.
Yeah, and I still ultimately believe in them over anybody, but the really difficult part of it is that there are only so many injuries that a team can sustain, and there's only so much that, because we can give all the credit in the world to whether it just be Kyle or even his father, Mike Shanahan, for being able to pluck running backs off the street, making the lack of Christian McCaffrey work this year. I mean, that's just a byproduct of the offenses that him and his father have schemed together for years and years and years. And that's its own separate thing. But you continue to lose out on, even prior to Brandon Ayuk having that knee injury that ended his season, it's not like he was contributing much anyway. You were already kind of looking for scraps at your wide receiver 2 position. And thankfully, Jawan Jennings has been able to step up at times and be a very effective replacement. And we even got to see a little bit of Ricky Pearsall this past weekend. That was a little fun. We'll see.
Don't get me started.
I'm sure we're going to talk.
I have thoughts
we're
on
going to be
Ricky
able to
Pearsall.
talk about him. Actually, you know what? Screw it. I want to hear your thoughts on Ricky Pearsall.
Well, so I want to actually first bring up something that you and I experienced together at the Senior Bowl. Sitting in the actual seat side of the stadium there in Mobile. Watching Ricky Pearsall and Lad McConkey run cone drills like 10 feet away from us. We were both just like, oh, dude, like the level of footwork that they're displaying and like their eyes and their hands and their like just spatial awareness. We were both just very impressed by those two receivers. What is Lad McConkey doing? He's working himself into the consideration of he might be like a back end wide receiver 2 the rest of the season with peak weeks as a wide receiver 1 because he's become a feature guy for Justin Herbert. Lad McConkey was a second round pick. Ricky Pearsall was a first round pick.
Mm-hmm. Dude.
Jawan Jennings is not a better wide receiver than Ricky Pearsall. This very second right now, Jawan Jennings is not better, and Kyle Shanahan knows it. I had a lot of people telling me that no, Jawan Jennings is going to cap Ricky Pearsall. I don't believe that. Ricky Pearsall is the wide receiver 3 in this offense if they're all healthy. I'll give Jennings a little nod. Debo's 1. We'll give Jennings 2. But I also think Jake Cowing's going to start getting involved a little bit more because they have to. San Francisco has to do something. I don't think McCaffrey's actually coming back after the bye. I think he comes back before the playoffs, but I think we're cautiously like week 14 on him.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me about making that kind of prediction, though, specifically with Cowing, is that because of how often they involve having a fullback in the formation, they're not really running a lot of personnel units that are going to have more than 2 receivers on the field at a time anyway. And in that situation, I think a player like Cowing is probably going to need somebody like Debo to work his way out of the lineup somehow, whether it be injury or whatever sort of other unfortunate circumstances call him. And but Pearsall, though, the other thing I was impressed about with Pearsall, speaking of when we were down at the Senior Bowl, like not only those cone drills were impressive, there was a lot of that going on that, we got a pretty good look at some of the, agility and, burst of some of these guys. But the thing that I remember the most about Pearsall is when they were doing those one-on-one drills, when they just had those, each team kind of siphoned off to their own end zones, and the confidence and timing with which he would go up and high point a ball and just know when to go snag it out of the air wasn't absolutely incredible to me. I think he demonstrated probably the best ability of that specific facet of his game of anybody that we saw there that entire, weekend plus that we were down there. And I will push back a little bit on what you said about Jawan Jennings not being better right now, because I think right now Jennings, he's a bigger dude. He can do some of those perimeter blocking schemes that are going to be things. So it's going to have to pick up as time goes along. But by the end of the season, I think Pearsall has a chance of being able to usurp him and being able to be within that wide receiver 2 role. So like people out there in deeper leagues, even in redraft, like I'm talking like 12 team with deep benches or like 14 team, 16 team, whatever, like this past waiver run that you just had, I hope some of y'all picked up Ricky Pearsall because there's definitely some potential there.
Oh, he's a big part. He's going to be a big part of this offense going forward. I love Ricky Pearsall. I think he should be rostered at a higher percentage than he is. 55% on Sleeper, which that's kind of skewed. He is caught of 9 targets, 7. 2 incompletions. That's pretty impressive for a guy who just stepped on the field after being shot. I mean, he's 2 weeks into his career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get to some questions here in the chat because they are rolling in.
Let's go.
We've got Nicholas saying, "Sup, guys? What is up, buddy? Thank you for tuning in." Abreu68. Bobby Abreu?
I think Jose Abreu.
Abreu.
Wore 68 with the White Sox.
Oh, nope, that tracks. Well, Jose, thanks for tuning in, man. We appreciate it. Big fans. Drop Jalen McMillan for Darnell Mooney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do it. I'm pretty high on Darnell Mooney. He's just finding ways to be relevant in that offense in Atlanta.
Yeah, like I like Jalen McMillan, and I would love at some point there to be enough production from him to warrant a discussion about him. But
Sure.
he's not as good as what Darnell Mooney is doing right now. The number of targets that he's receiving every week, he's very integral to that Falcons offense. The prospect of what McMillan could be is not more valuable than what Mooney is.
100%. Fan patron Neto preferred flex option this week: DJ Moore, Kareem Hunt, or Tyrone Tracy. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say Kareem Hunt, I think, just on volume. I think he sees the most work.
Yeah, no, I mean, so he has been the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs for 4 games now. And in that span, he has averaged 22.8 touch opportunities per game. And when I say touch opportunities, it's a term I like to use for carries and targets, not necessarily carries and receptions, because if you don't catch the ball, things happen, but it still demonstrates how involved you are in that offense. So yeah, 22.8 touch opportunities per game with an average of 16.2 PPR points per game in that span, ranking as the RB12. He is that guy. You absolutely get him going.
They're up against Tampa Bay this week. Tampa Bay hasn't been great against running backs, but they haven't been terrible. They're actually, they haven't been great. They're the 11th worst fantasy defense against running backs, 22.6 points. So
there you go. Right in line with his average, basically. So, hey.
Yeah, so Kareem Hunt, fire him up. Nicholas wants to know Cedric Tillman or Jordan Addison this week. We've got Tillman is up against that Chargers defense at home. Jordan Addison and the Vikings are up against Indy at home. I'm going to take Addison actually on matchup.
Checking my rankings here. I've got Addison at wide receiver 44. I've got Cedric Tillman all the way. Yeah, wide receiver 19. I'm bought in. I'm just
all right. Like, holy shit. Dude, wow. Yeah. Okay.
The volume, dude. And the other thing about it, and you know this about me, I've been very consistent about this the entire time I've been involved in the content creation, professional fantasy football space. I like lower ADOT, high volume receivers. That's the type of thing that I like to do. I play in PPR leagues. Most of my analysis is centered through PPR, but a high ADOT player like a Cedric Tillman, who's likely going to be seeing a lot of looks on really far, deep routes, being paired up with a gunslinger like Jameis Winston is a connection that I am willing to believe in. Like that alone.
Well, I mean, dude, the last 2 weeks, Cedric Tillman, 18 and 28.9 fantasy points in my home league, our home league we're in together here. He's got 21 targets, 15 catches, nearly 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. The 2 touchdowns last week from Jameis, beautiful. If this keeps up with Tillman, it's Tillman over Addison every single week.
Yeah, and I love Addison, but you can't argue with that kind of volume. You can't argue with that volume.
Yeah, who says that the 49ers should trade for Darius Slayton? Think he's on the market? I mean, New York is listless.
Darius Slayton's been on the trade market for 3 years now, and he just, he is a good receiver. I don't mean that in some sort of disparaging way, but teams have had an opportunity to pick him up for a while now. So, I think that kind of says what we need to know. I don't think it's a terrible idea, but at the same time, is he going to get moved? I'm not betting on it.
So, do you remember the fantasy unicorn?
Vaguely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Her and her husband had that podcast, and the only anytime I hear Darius Slayton, I remember listening to her and her husband talk about how much they loved Darius Slayton his rookie season. They were just player. They were locked. I don't know why. Yeah, I mean, he's been fine. 3P1C Fail wants to know Superflex, Flacco or Winston rest of season. Also, would you start Flacco over Stroud? I'm not going to go as far as saying I would start Flacco over Stroud. I like Flacco. They're up against Minnesota this week. That's going to be a tougher matchup. Houston has got
The Jets.
the Jets. That's a tough matchup too. I guess which way are you going then? Rest of season
Honestly,
this week.
Okay, so rest of season, I'm picking Flacco. Like all the really nice things we said about Jameis Winston are true, but we've seen what Flacco can do operating in this offense, the connection he has with Josh Downs, and he's thrown for multiple passing scores, and every time he's had substantial playing time, it's going to be fine, just like we had with Cleveland last year. I'm going Flacco. Yeah. But for this week specifically, I am going to go with Flacco. I do have CJ Stroud ranked as my QB 18 this week. I do not want to start him outside of Superflex. Like you said, it is a very tough matchup. For as much as the Jets secondary and defense as a whole, frankly, has regressed ever since the Robert Saleh firing, they still possess a crap ton of requisite talent to be able to shut down those receivers. And the loss of Stephon Diggs is it's huge, man. It's huge. And like,
it's huge.
If this had happened, like if this had been an intersection of like Diggs gets hurt at the same time as Nico Collins comes back, we might be having a completely separate conversation right now. But what we're looking at heading into week 9 is going up against a secondary with Sauce Gardner. Michael Carter is one of the best slot corners in the league, all this stuff. And we're talking about Tank Dell. Dalton Schultz hasn't been worth a lick the entire time this season. I would love to see John Mechie finally step up and do something. He's a really easy guy to root for obvious reasons, but like we still don't know what he's going to be all about. Xavier Hutchinson, if you're out there in dynasty leagues, if he's available, take a speculative flyer, pick him up. But even then, all the things I'm saying now, I'm trailing off into talking about dynasty. We're talking about this week. You know, so like that should be an indication to you alone. I'm not doing it at all. Flacco, the Vikings defense is literally the best in the league in like every metric you could count on, but he's just that boy. And he's got those weapons. You've seen him do it.
He's a veteran. Flacco, it's like, and I'm not comparing Flacco to John Elway. This is just the first name that I thought of because I have a Steve Atwater jersey right here.
Fair enough.
With John Elway, you didn't care what defense he was playing, and it wasn't because it was John Elway, because he was an elite Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm going to throw back a name that I don't even know that you're going to know. Steve DeBerg.
I've heard it. I don't know much about him.
So Steve DeBerg played for like 15 teams over 25 seasons. He was a backup quarterback. He never really started, but when he did start, he was really good. But it was like one of those guys where it's like Case Keenum. You let him start 5 games. You don't want him to go past that, right?
Exactly.
That was Steve DeBerg's entire career. But Steve DeBerg would come in for 5, 6, 7 games, and he had a powerful arm, and he was smart. He had been around. He had been with so many teams. He had seen every offense and learned every offense. So he could step into any situation and see any defense or any offense, and he knew how to operate it because he had done it at a backup level on scout teams, but he had done it. That's Joe Flacco. And he's done it at a much higher level than a guy like Steve DeBerg did it. But that's what he's done. He's been with, Denver, New York, Cleveland. Now he's in Indy, Baltimore. He's seen a lot of offensive systems. So Flacco's the ultimate guy where in this type of situation, when you give him weapons and you don't ask him to be mobile, well, he can do anything. He could be QB 5 the rest of the way, and it wouldn't super shock me. I'm not going to predict it.
No, it wouldn't shock me either. We watched him do a similar thing on a points per game basis last year in Cleveland. I mean, to drive your point home, like, so mind you, viewers, listeners out there, I turn 30 next year. Joe Flacco was drafted into the NFL when I was in middle school. That's how long this man's been around. I am a full-grown adult man, and that dude got drafted when I was in middle school. So, like, of course he's like, that shit just blows my mind on its own. But yeah, dude, and like in the way you're talking about DeBerg, also just want to give a quick shout out because it reminded me of Charlie Batch with the
Charlie
Steelers. When I was
Batch.
growing up,
I
dude,
love me some
Charlie Batch was
dude.
dude, he was so cool. He was so good. I love that guy. I love the fact that he's part of the local broadcast stuff too. Like whenever, so like when NFL Network airs the preseason games, they normally, cut to the local broadcast, kind of the same way that MLB Network does with their regional coverage. Anytime the Steelers have a preseason game on NFL Network and I get to hear Charlie Batch do his commentary, I'm like, hell yeah, dude, you're the man. Every time.
I remember him initially from his days in Detroit. I think it's cool he stuck around in Pittsburgh. I love that. Pittsburgh feels like one of those cities like Denver. You hear it from Alfred Williams, Houston native, came to see you in college. He was part of the national championship team in 1990. He's still on the radio here now. Played for Cincinnati, played for Denver. I think he played for Pittsburgh for a minute in like the late 90s. But he talks about the two places he loved the most was Pittsburgh and Denver. But most of his college teammates still live here. They still live in Denver and Boulder. Because he said, so what he said was, Colorado isn't a place you come to and leave. If you live here for any extended period of time, you don't ever want to live anywhere else. And I lived my whole NFL career trying to get back to Denver. And I finally got back here and I won a Super Bowl with John Elway. And it was great. I won 2 of them. Now I'm on the radio here and my family's a stat. Like, yeah, that's really cool. Weird aside. Got way off track. Let's get back on track here. 3P, 1C fail, half PPR. He needs to sit one of these 4. Tank Dell, Jalen Waddle, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Cedric Tillman. I'm between Waddle and JSN. I think Dell and Tillman are both starts, especially with Diggs out, like we just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. JSN is my lowest ranked because it seems as though DK Metcalf is going to be fine with his injury and be able to play. And if DK Metcalf is involved, then, the unpredictability between JSN and Tyler Lockett week to week is a little bit annoying. Like, not to insinuate that Tyler Lockett is like usurping anything or taking too much away per se, but just it's a weird. They throw a bunch, but the only people they consistently dump it to are Ken Walker in the backfield and Metcalf. The rest is just, kind of fending for scraps because, like Noah Fant also has a very low key role that doesn't get talked about enough. So for that reason alone, I kind of go there, but I don't have Tank Dell or Jalen Waddle all that much higher. We are kind of talking about the same general tier here. So vibes based, I'm just going to say like Tillman's my favorite for all the reasons we talked about before. Jason's probably the odd man out.
I agree. Nicholas does not. He said Waddle. But hey, differing opinions make this fun, right? Jamie Jamie jumped from Facebook from YouTube to Facebook. We love to see it. Mr. Scampers wants to know Corum, Charbonnet in Seattle or Justice Hill versus Denver. Boo. I don't like Justice Hill against the Broncos defense.
It's funny because the Broncos have allowed 44 receptions to opposing running backs this year, which is the 4th highest total in the NFL. But for all the reasons we talked about before, Deontay Johnson coming into the fold, are some of those outlet passes going to be there for Justice Hill now?
Right.
I'm not entirely sure. Even if you bring along Deontay slowly and integrate him into the offense, he plays only maybe a 50% snap share or something in his debut. That's still substantial enough to warrant him being on the bench. I'd rather just go with Charbonnet.
Yep, I'm with you. This is disturbing. Mr. Scamper says Braylon Allen was not born yet when I graduated high school. Mr. Scampers, I was of legal drinking age when Braylon Allen was born. He's 20. I was almost able to rent a car.
When he was born, I was in 4th grade.
We're all over the place here. Fun fact. Jamie, did you know that Roman Wilson was on IR? Herms?
Yes, I
I
did.
had not heard that.
There's so much weird uncertainty surrounding his health that's been going on since training camp that I don't even know what to think about it. I just think it's really disappointing that we haven't been able to see him emerge, because that's the reason that, that's the reason he got drafted. The Steelers need receiver help. He's a really talented guy. If he's really not healthy enough, that sucks. But he's been dealing with this since August. Is he really not healthy, man? I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not even offering the fact that there is some conspiracy going on. That's not what I'm saying. I'm merely just saying that because I'm frustrated. It's weird.
I am too.
I hate it.
I am too. Well, I mean, as a fellow Steelers fan, I may have told you. So I downloaded the whole Fortnite platform onto my Mac. So I finally have a computer fast enough to play a game. And my username is Yins Endiz.
Love it.
Yeah, I don't know. Weird. Anyway, so Jesse, he says, "Hey, is that Assassin's Creed?"
Looks like Batman.
Jesse, you're still here. If you could wait on that, we'd really like to know what that imagery is. Choose 2 to start for Jesse here. These guys: Drake London, Tank Dell, Marvin Harrison Jr., Devonta Smith. Is it crazy to go Marvin Harrison Jr. and Dell? He has Lamb already starting, CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. Yeah.
Let's see what my rankings say. I have I have Devonta Smith and Marvin Harrison Jr. back to back. So you can do whatever you want as far as that goes. But definitely London. And then I would just pick between your favorite, between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Devonta Smith. I'm ruling Dell out immediately. For all the reasons we talked about before, I'm just terrified of what's going to happen with Houston this week.
Okay, so Downs versus Dell. Downs.
Oh, dude, Josh Downs, man. Flacco's starting. Come on.
Well, not only is Flacco starting, but Minnesota is the 9th worst fantasy defense against quarterbacks. They're allowing 18.2 points per game to the quarterback position. However, even better for Josh Downs, they're the worst fantasy defense against the wide receiver position. They're allowing nearly 40 half PPR points to wide receivers.
Oh, dude, you know what's even crazier? So shout out our homies over at Razzball. They do a really good job of collecting data for points allowed to slot receivers specifically. And the thing that I found out is that they are allowing 19.1 points per game to opposing slot receivers, which is the second highest total. And guess what? Josh Downs runs 85.5% of his routes from the slot. It is tailor-made for him to go off.
Yes. My former employer, Razzball, the old Dynasty Diehards podcast, and my wife was my managing editor, which was, talk about a life dream. Sports media with your wife. Also a dream is answering Augusto Kishishian's question. His running backs are Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Chase Brown, J.K. Dobbins, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. His wide receivers, Herms. They're Drake London, Malik Neighbors, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, Juwan Jennings. His tight ends are Brock Bowers, T.J. Hawkinson. Would you do Deontay and Hunt for Jaden Reed?
Yes.
I wouldn't. You would.
Yeah. Well, because you got Breece and you got Kamara and Chase Brown is doing his thing.
That's
and as
true.
long as Jake, I sang the praises of Kareem Hunt earlier. I talked about all of his numbers. Yes, he is an incredibly valuable asset, but he is fungible from the standpoint of this kind of sounds like a dynasty roster. That's but even if we're talking in a redraft sense, Deontay is a little bit up in the air. I'm glad we had the discussion we had earlier, but even the two of us are just theorizing what might happen. We don't know. But
Yeah.
Jaden Reed, like, yeah, Jordan
That's
Love might not
fair.
this week, but it's not like he's dealing with something that's going to keep him out long term. And Jaden Reed's just been producing. He is a very proven commodity that I am very okay with having. So
Well, he's a little he's like a Swiss Army knife. So yeah, you've convinced me.
yeah, and also
Wonderful.
because after London and Neighbors, that depth at receiver is not very strong. You have a plethora of running back talent and a dearth of wide receiver production that you need to supplement.
Fair point. Jesse said it's Red Hood, so I'll be looking into that. Sounds like a game I might like to play now that I'm getting back into gaming. Now he's got a question for us. He dropped DeAndre Hopkins for Jonathan Brooks. He wants to know if this is a bad move. He's got Tank Bigsby and Tyrone Tracy and Pacheco on his bench currently. I'm not a huge believer in Jonathan Brooks being any sort of relevant fantasy asset this season. Carolina's not good, really. Carolina's not good. He was supposed to be ready for camp. Then he was supposed to be ready for week 1. Then he went on PUP. Then it was supposed to be week 5. That screams the team really wanted him on the field, but medically it's just not happening. That was a really bad knee injury, man. And they have no – if this was a team that was contending and he could contribute at like 85% health, we see him in week like 14. This is a team that not only is not contending, but they're probably going to fire Dave Canales after year 1. This is David Tepper. Canales got a 1-year shot. This has been a terrible experiment, off the rails bad in Carolina. There's no reason for them to start or play Jonathan Brooks in any sort of meaningful fashion. He'll get snaps, but he's going to get snaps in the way that J.J. McCarthy was going to get snaps behind Sam Darnold. We're going to figure out bit ways to work you in once you've learned the playbook in week like 12. But Chuba Hubbard has been great.
No, so that's kind of my issue with all of it is like the role and the value of those backfield touches in Carolina has been established. That was the thing about being excited about Jonathan Brooks that everybody got correct, is that there were a lot of people not really valuing how much they were going to run the ball. Dave Canales, coming from being the offensive coordinator last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, having their backfield be super successful with Rachaad White and company. Like, that was something that we definitely had projected correctly. But when it comes to Brooks, where I disagree with you is this concept that there's some like weird happenings going on. Yes, he did hurt his ACL when he was in college at Texas last November. Very convenient, quote unquote, time for him to return relatively early in the NFL season, optimistically speaking. But when it comes to what you're talking about with the rhetoric of like, oh, he'll be ready for camp, oh, he'll be ready for whatever. When you draft players who are coming back from serious injury, you have to assume the risk of prolonged ramping up or teams being cautious with activating them right away. I don't think that Brooks's injury is necessarily so bad that he can't get onto the field, but the Panthers are just looking to try to be as careful as possible with an investment they made with the second round pick.
Exactly.
And activating players off of injured reserve, the reason that there is a 21-day practice window that you have is so that you can be really methodical with how you want to go about it and kind of get a read on where your team is going to be. I don't think I don't think it has anything to do with Brooks as an individual. I honestly applaud the Panthers for being this cautious with it and protecting their investment to the point where, look, think about it like this, albeit under a completely different circumstance. However, years ago, when I don't even remember who the fuck was the starting running back of the Browns, but it was around the trade deadline. They traded whoever it was away, and that's when we got Nick Chubb debuting. That's what I'm getting at. Like way back, like
yeah.
Like similar-ish, again, different circumstances, but just irritating wise, similar circumstances of delayed gratification. Were you mad that it took until like week 9 or so of that year for Nick Chubb to come in and immediately produce? No, we didn't care, because by the time the season ended, he was the reason that things were successful for you, because you had a free, Uber flex at your disposal because you were patient with them on your IR spot or your bench spot, which is functionally the same thing. So like, that's where I don't know. Brooks is still somebody, he can still be a league winner, because his ADP was late enough to the point where, frankly, a lot of the teams that are stashing Jonathan Brooks should still be alive. If you're losing out because you drafted Jonathan Brooks, that was malpractice on your part during draft season. That had absolutely nothing to do with anything that was going on with his health or anything that was going on with the Panthers organization bringing him along slowly as they should. So that's where I just get really worked up about this. And I'm sorry for ranting, but like, this is some rhetoric that I saw on the timeline today that just really pissed me off, because when it comes to players who are hurt from serious injury or guys who are like suspended for, long periods of time, you assume inherent risk. That is part of the game that we play. DeAndre Hopkins, whatever the hell he can do in this offense could be exciting for the Chiefs, but it's not going to be nearly as exciting as the possibility of Jonathan Brooks inheriting some portion, even if it's just like 70% of the Chuba Hubbard volume into this scheme that is just going to pound the rock into oblivion, because they know they don't have a quarterback play. They don't have Deontay Johnson anymore, and they're going to have to be able to just drain clock and do the best they can on defense to even be remotely competitive for the rest of this year. So like oh my God, Jesus, I was not ready for this today. Fuck. Wow. Welcome to the Nate and Herms show. We are back, baby. It's 1:30 in the morning.
So okay, I love what you said, and you're not wrong. Jonathan Brooks is a fantasy football asset moving forward. If you're in Dynasty and he's being devalued in Dynasty in your leagues, go buy the dip, because he hasn't played.
Do it now.
100%.
Yes, please.
Do it right now.
Go do it now. The lack of availability is honestly not as much of a detriment as people are treating it as. It's just, real life happenstance. That's all it is.
Well, and in Dynasty, with an asset like Jonathan Brooks, I have been saying this since before the season started. With Jonathan Brooks, in respect to Jonathan Brooks, I love the talent. Great running back. And when he gets his moment, he is going to be phenomenal. With the knee injury, and I know he's probably nearly 100% at this point, but Carolina's bad. Why bother risking it? From a real as a fantasy analyst, do I, in a fantasy football manager who has him on some dynasty rosters that could really, really use some Jonathan Brooks production, do I want him? 100% I do. Would love to have him, be able to plug him in and get that Jonathan Brooks production. Chuba Hubbard's been too good for that. They don't need Jonathan Brooks to be Jonathan Brooks this season. They need Jonathan Brooks to be 100% in 2025. And from a real football standpoint, they're going to roll him out in a very minimal fashion. We're going to see some of him this season. We're going to get flashes of the awesomeness of what he's going to be. Hopefully, Carolina doesn't ruin him like they have Bryce Young. But just like I have no interest in really having him on my roster in redraft.
But they've shown functionally that they can support a running back with high volume with success.
I know they can, but they don't need to do it with Jonathan Brooks this year.
I know, but they're going to, because they still have to give him reps. They still have to give him experience.
But I think maybe we see Jonathan Brooks get like 10 carries like week 15 through 18. I could see that happening, but I could also see that not happening. And as someone who, if you're looking at rolling into those weeks as a contender, is it worth the risk? Is
So
it worth the risk?
Let me ask it to you like this then. Do you see it kind of like what Rashad White and Bucky Irving are doing in Tampa, but without the upside of the passing game involvement? Because I really don't think the receiving facet's going to be strong for either of them. But just in terms of that sort of tandem 1A, 1B type situation, is that kind of what you're getting at? Because if so, I could see that.
Sure.
And that would suck. I'd be really mad if that happened. But it's possible.
But if it's 1A and 1B from week 14 to week 18, that's not helpful in fantasy, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, what if it's... I think he might debut this week. He practiced fully on Wednesday, which was a huge deal. Anytime you can see a guy come back to full participation, that's huge. So let's say even he sits out week 9. Let's say this week it doesn't matter at all. If we get week 10 through the end of the season, is it worth it for you then?
As someone that you roster, if you've got the spot to see what happens.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I think you can flex him. I think you can flex him if nothing else.
I'm not, if he's active week 10, I'm not flexing him week 10 unless I'm in dire need. I want to see what he does week 10. He sits on my bench. I'm starting probably a handful of other players, more than a handful of other players over him that might be on my bench. But if he goes off, Canales, I think, feels like he's playing for his job in year 1 because this has been such a shit show. So
that's what I'm saying, dude. That's what I'm saying. Like stuff.
I get where you're going. Like Toronto Dave said, let Herms cook. But now we gotta
I'm burning the patties now. I'm burning the patties. I gotta
stop. Dude. Some crabby patties. We got Mr. Scampers has got a question. Mandrews versus Denver or Tucker Kraft on his birthday versus the Detroit Lions. I trust no one against this Denver offense, so I'm going Tucker Kraft. Plus, I love Tucker Kraft. So,
if Jordan Love doesn't play, I'm gonna go Mark Andrews.
Well, caveat.
But generally speaking, assuming health for everybody, I would go Kraft. If Jordan Love's in there, start Tucker Kraft.
Yep. 3P1C fail needs to drop one of these handcuffs. Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, Zach Charbonnet, or Tyler Algier. I would have said Braylon Allen before this past weekend. Then he scored a touchdown. So I'm like, well, okay, what's going to happen? Because
they split the red zone carries too. That was fascinating.
They did. In my waiver article on OptimusFantasy.com, shameless plug. One of the things that Braylon Allen was an ad for me this week because I can see a scenario where Aaron Rodgers is let's be honest, he's washed, right? He's done. It's bad. It's really bad.
No matter how much cayenne pepper and water in the world exists, no matter how much he can drink out of that, it's not happening.
I will vouch that actually does work. Quite honestly, like it's really good for like your inflammation system. For me, it's worked.
Bro, sometimes when I'm bored and like my sinuses are bothering me, I got like a bottle of Frank's Red Hot that I just like sit on this little counter next to me. I'll just open that thing, slap a couple things back, just a couple drops on the tongue. It works. Dude. I'm not trying to shit on cayenne pepper's effectiveness. That's not my goal.
No. So when I was a kid, I had asthma real bad, right? It sucked. Hard to breathe sometimes. So when I'd start to have like these congestion episodes, my allergist told my parents to give me a shot of Tabasco. Like,
hey, there you go.
I learned I think that's why I like spicy food. Probably. So Braylon Allen is food. Long answer, long roundabout way to get to this. It's not Braylon Allen. I think for me, it's probably Zach Charbonnet.
We saw early in the year without Ken Walker what he's capable of, though. For me, it's Ray Davis. Like we had that little blip on the radar
where he was able to work his way into relevance based off of James Cook being a little bit banged up. But this past week, Cook just dominated the volume. Any sort of mirage of Ray Davis's emergence just, kind of became a little bit too apparent to me. But
Right.
I am honest, like, look, I will say, just because I say Ray Davis, you say Charbonnet, we say whatever, we're only discussing this because we were told to pick a handcuff. The waiver wire this week was terrible. If you have bench spots and you need running backs, all of these guys are good options. I want that caveat to be known. Like, all of these guys are worth rostering. We can debate the merits of the four of them, but they should all be there because, like, dude, the committee running back is starting to dwindle a little bit. I wrote about this in my rankings article this week. There were, I think it was 19 running backs have occupied at least a 66% opportunity share in their backfield this year, which is up from 12 dudes in 2021 and 2022. So, like, we're definitely seeing, like, it's work is becoming more consolidated in backfields these days. Finding standalones is going to be hard. I think handcuffs are still a very valid option at this point in the season.
Oh, I completely agree. Jonathan Russell wants to know, should I start Bo Nix or Lamar Jackson? I love Bo Nix. Lamar Jackson's QB1. So you start Lamar Jackson. Yeah.
Yep.
Jamie Parag, have I told you, Nate and Herms, how much I love you guys? Jamie, we love you too, buddy. We appreciate it. Should I drop Brooks for Juju or McMillan from Jesse in the Red Hood? No.
You know how I feel.
Yeah. So Jamie Parag wants to know running back stashes. Bigsby, Braylon Allen, Tyler Algier, Sharby, Roshan Johnson, Trey Benson. Who are you stashing?
Blake Corum. My favorite of all of them, Roshan. Because he already has a fixed red zone role. He already does get those goal. So, like, anything that is added on to him is supplementary to the high value touches he gets already. That's the thing that I like the most about him. And honestly, I'm not counting Bigsby as part of this. My big hot take for this week that I published in my upcoming start sit column is that I think Tank Bigsby is just going to hold this job.
I think
ETN
so too.
Doesn't matter to me anymore. I think ETN might get. I don't think ETN sucks. I am a supporter of his, but I think, like, maybe he gets dealt, or maybe the Jaguars just kind of ride it out because, look, Doug Peterson inherited Travis Etienne, but he chose Tank Bigsby.
Well, I think we've talked about that on this show before, where it's like, Bigsby was supposed to have a bigger role last year. It didn't happen, but we knew it was inevitable.
And
things happened. Like, he was a rookie. We got TD, Toronto Dave. Hot takes. Yeah.
We were getting spicy, not going to lie.
We were. Mr. Scampers had a Crown Royal on the gums for toothaches as a child. So here's a fun story. One of my best friends in high school, his mom was the home ec teacher. She used to put Bacardi 151 on his gums when he was a little kid to get his toothaches to stop and to get him to go to sleep. Guess what we drank a lot of in high school? You'll never know. Hey-o. That shit catches on fire. Be careful. Buyer beware. Adam A123 on YouTube. He's got a question for us, Herms. 12-man PPR, 1 flex, Hertz, Hall, Brian Robinson, Drake London, Puka Nacua, DK Metcalf, or David Njoku. His bench also Chase Brown, Kincaid, BTJ, Cedric Tillman, Juwan Jennings. He's 5-3, haven't lost in a month. Also, any advice going forward? Anyone you would sell? Anywhere you'd be looking for depth on this lineup?
God damn, I wish I had a team like this.
Right? Like, I think I can honestly say I wouldn't really do much of anything. I might be looking to get some value out of Kincaid rest of season, possibly.
Yeah,
Cleveland already had their bye, so in Njoku you can just roll out.
Exactly.
You really don't need Dalton Kincaid. I might. Okay. I would package Kincaid and Jennings for another running back.
Thank you. Okay, I'm glad you went there, because if we're gonna nitpick and we're gonna pick something that we don't like, I adore Brian Robinson, and I think Chase Brown has proven me wrong as hell this year.
Sure.
But if we are going to nitpick based off everything that you have, the RB2 spot is probably your weakest. And at that point, and like, look, man, if Kincaid's not super popular in your trade market, you could take Jennings, and even maybe a little bit spicy, but I don't care. Take a Brian Thomas Jr. Put Jennings and BTJ together and do something, because I think what we found in Tillman is real. But actually, well, screw it. I mean, you could even hedge that bet and go Jennings and Tillman for all I care. But whatever it is, address the RB2, because for as much as we love B. Robin, for as good as his contributions have been this year, Austin Eckler is around. Austin Eckler's not going anywhere. It is a committee backfield. You could theoretically weasel your way into having a guy with slightly more guaranteed higher volume week to week. But yeah, I mean, kudos on the team though. Adam underscore A123, you are killing it. Love to see it.
Yeah. Jonathan Russell, another question for us here. Should I start James Conner or Nick Chubb? It's Nick Chubb. He's a guy who can peak at like a top 5 running back every week. We know what talent he has. We know what this offense is. And with Jameis being a much better passer than Deshaun Watson was, they can run the ball just a little bit easier. You're forcing that secondary back. You're forcing linebackers to pay more attention to the pass so you can get that cushion. Chubb could average 4 yards a carry rest of season. I would rather have him.
I've got James Conner at RB21. I've got Nick Chubb down at RB32.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, look, the guaranteed volume of James Conner is just, like, not to say that Chubb doesn't have guaranteed volume, but
sure,
he's still working his way back a little bit, and the Chargers' run defense is legitimately pretty good. And I know Connor doesn't have the easiest matchup in the world going up against the Bears this weekend, but like, he's proven it time and time again. I'm just going to go with the healthier guy. Rest of season is a different argument. Point. I'm just, for this week though, I'm just going to go with the healthier guy.
That's fair. Jamie loves that you love Roshan. Apparently so much so you're his new favorite. So fine. I guess Jamie's dead to me now. Mr. Scampers, don't do drugs, kids. Ogun Bawale. Yeah, fair enough.
Daria Gunbawale, shout out the Houston Texans running back. Let's go.
Oh, RIP. Born 2024, dies 2024 in fantasy. Adam A123, thoughts on Tillman rest of season? I think we kind of threw that out there. We like his volume. It's probably not going anywhere.
Ton of volume, really good downfield role with a guy who likes to chuck it downfield.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. Jonathan Russell says, thanks for all the help. Of course. Please make sure you subscribe. Like
That's
this
what we're
video.
Here for.
We'll be here next week. This is it's like our own personal therapy session. You guys get to tune in and help us by asking us football questions, mostly.
And make sure you keep those questions rolling in, because I think we still got a little bit of time left in us to go over some different stuff.
Yeah, it's only been an hour. I mean, we're still here.
Exactly.
Jamie, humble brag. He's in an ID Plus offense best ball tournament. 1,800 contestants. He's 12th overall in points, and one of 7 people who are 16-0, playing with the league median, undefeated. I also won this tournament last season, first place. $3,000. Dude, we are playing the wrong tournaments.
And the reason Jamie is this good is because he listens to the advice here at Optimus Fantasy. Nah, JK. I mean, like, look, Jamie, like, you got, like, not to diminish our own stuff, but like, man, you're a sharp guy. You're a sharp guy.
He's a sharp guy.
What you're doing, and I'm proud of you, man. Like, honestly, that's really cool. No, don't humble brag that
that's
at
awesome.
all. Brag about that, dude.
No, super brag about it.
Exactly, dude. Like that's cool stuff, man.
Yeah.
That's really great to hear. I'm glad you're doing well.
Yeah, man. We're gonna get on to Wacko for Flacco here real quick because, well,
Oh,
this
boy.
is wild.
I
Anthony
got a lot of
Richardson.
thoughts.
Oh man. I might have to go full screen for you for these thoughts here. I am a big fan of Joe Flacco. We've talked about him a little bit here earlier. I think this is more. I want to talk a little bit about Anthony Richardson at first. We all assumed he was hurt when he tapped on his helmet. It's like, yeah, that's the universal sign for I need out. I'm tapping out. Turns out, dude was tired. I get that. I get tired walking through Costco.
I get tired doing most things, so yeah, I feel you, bro.
Yeah. We're not what people call an elite athlete in peak physical condition.
My relative athletic score is going to be nowhere near a perfect 10.
No.
Nowhere near that.
I feel like I clock in at like a 2.3. We'll give me a 2.3. What the dude? Steichen made it clear per Adam Schefter that this isn't just like a 1 week thing. Flacco's the starter moving forward. He's it.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson is benched. So here's my question, and then I am going to let you cook.
Got you.
Is Anthony Richardson done in the NFL? Is this whole tapping out thing, is this like a Jamarcus Russell didn't watch the tape moment? I think it's what I want to know, because I'm going to say that that's what this feels like to me. As someone who has coached sport and coached sport at decently high levels of competitiveness, if my quarterback is like, hey, I just need a play or two off, I'm tired. Okay, well, what happens when we're in the fourth quarter of a playoff game and you've had to run your ass off in the 2-minute drill to try and win this, and we're on the 8-yard line with 45 seconds left, and you're like, sorry, coach, I'm tired. Because at that point in the season, I know, because here's the problem. He's still tired. He doesn't tap out and he fucks up and he costs you the game. That's why I'm saying Anthony Richardson, if I'm Shane Steichen, he doesn't start again this season. I'm done with him. That was weak. If you're an athlete you're getting paid at that level, what you're telling me is that you're not actually doing the work because you're not in NFL regular season shape.
I think there's an angle to which you could make that argument, and I also think him kind of willingly admitting that this was the reason that he tapped out was something I probably wouldn't have said out loud. That's not something I would have necessarily shared with the media. But what bothers me about focusing on this, like, not to dismiss anything that you said, but when it comes to how I want to view this situation holistically, what we're zooming in on when it comes to him tapping out is more of the catalyst rather than just the whole arc of what's been happening in general. What really bothers me about the decision to bench Anthony Richardson is the fact that coming into the NFL, this is a player that only started 13 games when he was in college at the University of Florida. Coming into the NFL, it was not a mystery that he was going to require having some sort of learning on the job type experience. This is kind of similar to what we saw, if we remember, years ago when Mitchell Trubisky got drafted by the Chicago Bears. His starting tenure at North Carolina, I believe he'd only started 16 games in his college career. there are some guys who show a ton of athletic prowess, have a lot of the tools that are required to be an NFL starting quarterback, but don't necessarily have the requisite experience game-wise to be able to read every situation accurately and be able to follow a bunch of the game plan stuff, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when the Colts made this investment with the 4th overall pick in the draft a couple years ago to take Anthony Richardson, these were not unknown quantities. This was not some sort of factor that we didn't know was going to be at play. There was going to be a limited factor of Anthony Richardson's base of experience that he was going to have to learn on the job and struggle to begin with. I think bailing on the guy after 10 career NFL starts based off of what we knew was already going to be a significant struggle to begin with is somewhat malpractice. I know a lot of people like to make the argument of saying, with the benefit of hindsight, well, that just means Anthony Richardson was a bad pick. Sure, we can debate the merits of that all we want, but like I said, it was not unknown information that he lacked experience as a starter coming into this to begin with. So when you assume that level of risk, you have to be comfortable with letting somebody learn on the job. I wish his shoulder injury last year didn't happen because we could have gone through a lot of these growing pains in 2023 and kind of solved a lot of these issues during that time period. But benching him now does not give you any sort of indication of what type of role he's going to play in your organization in the year 2025 or in 2026. That's what bothers me the most. You knew this was going to be a thing. The optics are just so terrible as a result of it. When you take on a project and you get mad that you can't finish the project right away, is it the project's fault or is it your fault for starting the project?
Okay, so in listening to what you were saying, I want to point something out because I think you got to a point that I should have made when I made the Jamarcus Russell comparison. Here's the Jamarcus Russell comparison. Dude was failed by his organization.
And he didn't give a shit. Let's be honest. He did not give a shit.
But he could have been made to give a shit. Good
That's
coaching,
true.
A good organization could have gotten him to give a shit. I think he came into an organization where it was very clear that it was like, I got a big check and I don't have to do shit because no one's checking up on me. I don't want to see the Colts organization fail Anthony Richardson because we all know the talent's there. This dude is wildly athletic. I wish at any point in my life I could say that I could have done any of the things that he can do. His skill level is beyond. We need someone who can take the time, Joe Flacco, to teach him how to be more of that patient touch passer. Stick in the pocket a little bit more. Don't sacrifice your body at every turn because you're never going to be on the field. His style of play lends himself to getting hurt right now. He needs someone to teach him not to play that way. I get that. If I was an NFL quarterback, I can't say my style of play would be much different than what he does. You use what you have.
YOLO ball.
YOLO ball. Get it. He needs better coaching than what he's getting in Indy. I think Shane Steichen thought, well, look what I did with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts wasn't nearly as raw of a prospect as Anthony Richardson. To your point, the dude didn't get to start much in college at Florida. So you're talking about a guy coming in here that doesn't have a ton of NFL experience. Mitchell Trubisky, as you referenced. These are very similar situations. I fear that Anthony Richardson isn't going to get the proper shot to be what he could possibly be. This dude's ceiling is Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
His floor is being compared to Jamarcus Russell because he burned out in 2 seasons because he didn't get the right coaching and the right support.
Or with the poor completion percentage. I mean, Akili Smith back in the day with the Bengals. And real quick, I'll let you get back to what you're talking about.
Akili Smith.
I just want to highlight this real quick from Jamie. So my thoughts, we knew he was a project. Yeah, he shouldn't have ever been started in those 10 games to begin with. So that's also kind of my point. If you knew that, then fucking make a plan. Start Gardner Minshew last year.
Right.
Don't throw him into like that.
we can sit here with the benefit of hindsight and say it was a risky pick. You probably shouldn't have thrown him in, doing whatever. Like, of course, all of that can be true. But if you knew that, this wasn't a secret. Make a contingency plan and stick to it to begin with. Back to you.
Well, it's like what I said in Carolina last season when they brought in Andy Dalton and then they drafted Bryce Young. That's perfect. Start Andy Dalton this year.
Yes.
Last year. Not this year.
When we were growing up, they used
year.
to just let them sit and chill and learn shit.
And the guys who didn't get to sit and chill, John Elway's completion percentage his rookie season was below 50%. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns. He's in the Hall of Fame. After looking at his stats, I understand that is purely on vibe. Because he was not statistically a great quarterback, save like maybe 3 seasons of his career. That dude, but the vibe was there. 100%. Anthony Richardson, without the right coaching, will be neither.
Yeah. And it's a real shame because they knew all of this. They knew all of this. And they thought,
this is happier. Let's talk about some questions in the chat here. Jonathan Russell, I want to know how much you think I messed up if I traded Amon-Ra and Kyle Pitts for Saquon Barkley. If my other receivers are Malik Neighbors and AJ Brown, but my running backs were J.K. Dobbins and Brian Robinson Jr. I would have maybe tried to give up something other than Amon-Ra.
Yeah, like I think it's still an overpay. Like I understand that you're compensating for a lack, but that lack was not so strong that you needed to give up Amon-Ra and Pitts for that. I think even like Kyle Pitts straight up, that's a conversation. We could talk about that. Amon-Ra straight up, just hell no. But then when you package them together, it's an even larger hell no for me. And like, yeah, like you could have had that conversation with Pitts alone, I think.
Oh, 100%. Maybe Pitts in like if it's dynasty, like a 4th round pick.
Just maybe a little more than that. You know, maybe
3rd round? Third?
I would say, honestly, if you're really contending and that person's going to be finicky, a win now move, if you send Pitts in a second, I'm not going to crucify you for doing that, you know. But, like, Amon-Ra, dude, Amon-Ra should have been nowhere near this deal because the philosophy, like, obviously, there's a ton of different ways you can break down analyzing trades and all that stuff. But generally speaking, you want to end up with the best player, right? And I think Amon-Ra is still the best player in the deal, and that's what bothers me.
No, he's by far the best player. 3P1C failed. Do you think A-Rich is droppable at all in Superflex if you have Flacco? Now that they said Flacco is a QB moving forward.
Redraft?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I think so. Jesse, Mr. Red Hood over here, wants to know, would you trade London for Jennings, Mason, and Tillman? No. No. Mason's value, if CMC comes back, is dead.
Yeah. That's the biggest part.
Yeah. Jamie Prog wants to know, do you remember McNabb got tired when he didn't give up in that championship game? Yeah, he didn't win, but he never gave up. No. I remember that. Remember Matthew Stafford getting nearly knocked unconscious, coming back onto the field with a dislocated shoulder and throwing a touchdown pass.
I do remember because that was his entire career in Detroit.
It was because he had no offensive line. Jason Ortiz on YouTube. Would you trade Stevenson and Amari Cooper and one of Wan'Dale Robinson, Jawan Jennings, or Jalen McMillan for Breece Hall and Deontay Johnson? No. That's way too much.
I know. Oh, he said one of. If I could do Stevenson, Cooper, and Jennings, sure. Because you're getting Breece.
I mean, in a vacuum, I'd probably do Stevenson, Cooper, and Jennings for Breece straight up.
But then
honestly.
you're losing out on the bonus of Deontay. You might as well take the bonus.
I mean, take the bonus and drop him in 2 weeks when he doesn't do anything, I guess. Yeah, Mr. Scamp saying, I sweat when I flip from sunny side to over easy. Yeah, no. Yeah, we're old. Anthony Richardson comment here. Hopefully he has the fortitude to realize he majorly effed up and will keep working and move on. I think he will.
Yeah. It's
Like,
it's not the primary thing, but it was the catalyst that facilitated the change, and I think he'll learn from that.
No, he will. What I want to know, if we learned anything from this, Mr. Bo Nix, is this real life? Because he's been really good. I know they've had some cherry matchups the last 3-4 weeks. They've got some really tough ones coming up. But if somebody's going to score in this offense, it's Bo Nix.
It's been absolutely crazy. Since week 5, he ranks as the QB 5 with 21.9 fantasy points per game and 4 point per passing touchdown scoring, and averaging 37.2 rushing yards per game in that span. I didn't think he could scoot, but I think I will say I don't remember who tweeted this whatsoever. But whoever it is, shout out whoever you are. Kind of reminds me of the same thing that the person who tweeted this kind of maybe what Sean Payton always thought the offense could be like if Taysom Hill was in charge. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like
that's interesting.
Letting him run a little bit, doing a little short A-dot stuff. Like, again, I wish I could attribute that thought to whoever came up with it. That was not the thing it's not an original thought from my brain. But, like, I agree with whoever said that because it is interesting. It is really interesting to see that kind of facilitate the way that it has.
Is. Well, okay, when we watched Bo Nix in Mobile, something that we talked about was his restlessness in the pocket. What has he done exceptionally well the last 3-4 weeks? Get outside of the pocket. When Denver is running a no huddle, Bo Nix looks electric.
Yeah.
And comfortable.
Those college reps are paying off.
Yeah, no, they really are. Does Troy Franklin get at some point more involved? Like, we had kind of like snippets of it happening, and then this past week there was just nothing. He was a DFS play I really liked. It just didn't materialize.
I just have such a hard time predicting what any of these pass catchers are going to do because between the overall dearth of talent and the fact that, like, a lot of them keep getting hurt and in and out of the lineup, it's really, really hard to predict who's going to be good with that week to week. Let alone long term, but at least as far as Knicks goes in isolation, like, I'm impressed. I only have one dynasty share because I didn't really believe in him that much at all.
Sure.
But turns out that league, I really needed a quarterback. And I'm not mad that I have him now. I'm not completely changing my tune yet. And I do think that going up against the Ravens defense this week is going to be a huge test for him. When it comes to their secondary, they have not performed quite up to snuff for what you would consider from a traditional Baltimore defense, albeit
Sure.
We're living in a world where Mike Macdonald left as the defensive coordinator to take the head coaching job in Seattle with the Seahawks. We're having a first-year defensive coordinator in Zachary Orr taking over, but their run defense is stout. I do believe, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, they rank 4th best in run defense DVOA so far this year. The Ravens are going to be able to take away that entire facet of the Broncos offense this weekend. Javonte Williams, good luck. Jaleel McLaughlin, good luck.
Right.
The pressure is going to be on Nix. I don't necessarily expect him to do phenomenally well, but if he even shows competency in this matchup, I will become a believer. I think I'm close.
Believer.
A
believer.
I'm getting
All right,
there.
well,
I'm getting there, man.
Yeah, we're approaching an hour and a half, so we're going to kind of work on getting out of here. But real quick, Big Trouble in Little Michigan, Jameson Williams. We've got the suspension for PEDs, and now we've got the kind of shady gun charge, but maybe not gun charge thing going on. In fantasy rest of season, we're not going to talk dynasty, but in redraft, are you holding Jameson Williams or are you dropping him on this news?
I mean, look, the NFL's really slow when it comes to suspending players for stuff. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They typically just let the legal process play out. I mean, think about it. Before he got hurt, Rashee Rice was playing. He wasn't suspended. We thought the whole time, oh my God, what's going to happen with him? Until the legal process plays out, if there even is anything resulting from this, the worst discipline Jameson Williams could face is, I guess, maybe like another game suspended from the team. I don't know. But, like, yeah, my opinion hasn't really changed. The NFL is usually pretty they're pretty okay with just following the judicial system's drumbeat before they act.
Sure. Makes sense. Now for the final segment of the night, Fantasy Festivus for the rest of us. Herms, what is your Week 9 fantasy football grievance?
I just kind of hate the fact that we don't have a lot of clarity surrounding Christian McCaffrey's health. Like, I know it's a weird thing to get mad about at this point, considering how annoying it's been the whole time. But, like, Jordan Mason with his shoulder injury and kind of starting to watch him dwindle a little bit, he was a perfect replacement. He was, playing like a league winner, and now he's kind of dipping now more into RB2 territory. Does that leave room open for Isaac Arendo to make it even more frustrating? Does Christian McCaffrey come back at all? Like, I'm hoping that this bye week gives them a lot of time and clarity to be able to figure this shit out.
Sure.
Because I swear, if Christian McCaffrey sits out this entire year, like, or at least functionally to the point that people who drafted him don't make the playoffs anyway, like, I'm just going to be so peeved. And I'm happy in the grand scheme of real life, because that means, they're treating his body, his physical health seriously. And they're, but like, just as a fantasy manager, like, damn, like, in terms of, so we've gone through this before. We've been playing fantasy for years and years and years. We take players that have these injury risks or suspension risks or whatever, and we just kind of hope for the best. Similar argument to what I made for Jonathan Brooks before. But we're talking about a guy you probably took with the first pick of your draft. If Christian McCaffrey doesn't come back in time to help people who drafted him make the playoffs, is it the worst pick of like the last half decade or so?
So I got the first pick in my home league for the first time ever. Never had the number one pick. I took CMC. You know what my record is. I'm 1-7.
Yeah.
I want to get back to this real quick here. 3P1C failed. Did you guys answer if A-Rich was droppable in Superflex? If you have Flacco, rewind back, please. Yeah, drop him. We did get a little long-winded on that. But my fantasy Festivus is this entire damn season in the injuries, dude. And tight ends. Plus tight ends. Plus, come on. Please just be... I'm ready for 2025 of fantasy, but we're going to get through this season, and I'm out. I'm doing really well in Scott Fishbowl, which is exciting. Yeet.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Doing well in King's Classic too. So I'll take it.
Love to see
fantasy. It's fantasy football, right? It's just, we're having fun out here. And speaking of fun, tomorrow, you can join me and Casey Kasem. She is back. And we may or may not be dressing up for Halloween. I don't know. I may or may not be dressing up as the greatest catcher, in my opinion, who ever lived that played for a certain team. But it's me and Casey Kasem at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please set a reminder. Tune in, like, subscribe so you don't miss a show. And then on Friday, big day of shows here, 4 p.m. Eastern. Me and Mike Reedy, DFS Live, all your main slate information to help you win some money on DraftKings and FanDuel. And then 2 hours later, I will be live with Herms, this dude. And the one and only, the godfather of fantasy football analysis, Mr. Football Diehard himself, Bob Harris of Football Guys and Sirius XM Radio. You might listen to him with Mike
Dempsey.
Mike Dempsey. I wanted to call him Matt Donnelly, the mustache.
Oh, shout out Donnelly.
Shout out
Love
Donnelly, good old dingus. Yeah, Bob Harris is great. If you've got questions, make sure you tune in at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to answer all of them until we just can't answer questions anymore. Bob's capped at an hour, but we'll do our best here. Thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it. Reddit, 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And one final thing.
Yes.
We've got an election coming up. We're not going to get super political here. Here's what I'm going to say. Get out and vote. This may be one of the most consequential elections of your lifetime. You can't complain if you don't exercise your right to vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who's followed us on the interwebs for long enough know where we stand on things, and that's not the point that we're getting at. If you feel strongly,
just vote.
And if you feel strongly, just go out and vote. That's really the most you can ask. So,
yep. Tuesday, November 5th is right around the corner, guys. But we'll be back tomorrow.
Fantasy
for
football
C.H.
never
Herms,
stops.
it never stops, year round. For C.H. Herms, I am Nate Polvogt. Thank you for joining us late night for the last hour and a half. We appreciate it. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe. We're out.